Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. Today I am joined by John Paul Mason. And the last time we spoke, we were looking ahead to a match against Sturm Graz in the Europa League. Since then, we've had a win. We've then had a defeat at the hands of Hearts. Then we had Monday. Can only be described as a manic Monday, if you want to keep the music theme going. And then we had last night. Where do you want to start, JP? Where do you want to start in relation to our last week in the world of Celtic?
I guess to go back to the time at the end of the season, the last home game of Brendan Rodgers' first season back, and you got the press privilege or the press invitation to go and interview players after the game and be in the kind of fan zone or whatever, and you said, are you up for doing it? And I haven't ever asked for these opportunities throughout the time. You can vouch for that. It's not something that I've been kind of like clamoring to do. I don't consider myself in any way a media person or anything like that. I'm somebody that comes on a Thursday and talks to you and then I switch off my computer, and after that I don't generally consider myself to be some sort of fan media or anything like that. And for people that do that I've got friends that do that, and that's totally fine. Their personas are their personas, and I like I said, I don't think of myself like that. But I went along and I really enjoyed the experience. I got to speak to James Forrest. I got to speak to Greg Taylor. Brought up the fact that Jamie had sort of started the Open Your Instagram Comments campaign to allow people to give him praise. Mm-hmm. And then he said, "Oh, I know that guy. I know his work. I know he's a legend," I think he said. And then we were all standing there, and I think it was kind of sort of time to go, chaps, was the kind of vibe that I was getting from personnel at Celtic. And then Brendan Rodgers looked along the line, saw the gathering of people. I mean, maybe recognised one of them, and that led him over. I'm not sure if it maybe was James Forrest from the Celtic blog or not. He wrote a really good piece. He's written a couple of good pieces in the last day or two about the Rodgers thing, and he just voluntarily walked along. I could actually see the person that had been dealing with us kind of go, "Oh, what are you doing? Like, you've got to go."
Breaking ranks,
aye. But he came along and he spoke to us for no more than 5 minutes, just a sort of friendly chat. And there'd been a lot being made at that time of how we were going to see the real Rangers. I think that has been the kind of rhetoric for a while. Now, every time something new happens there, we'll see the real Rangers. So he said at the very end of his chat to us, he said, and I'll never forget it, "And now you'll see the real Celtic." And he smiled, and with an air of confidence about him that suggested that going into season 2, we were going to see us potentially competing at where we wanted to compete.
Yeah.
Now, regardless of anybody's thoughts about what happened from February onwards, you cannot argue that last season we went to a place with him that we hadn't been for a very long time. You can also the naysayers will say, "Oh well, we got a kind draw. We lucked out. Big deal. It was a shoot for the moon moment." And I don't really subscribe to that. It was the first year of the new format of the Champions League. The cards fell as they did. We got hammered 7-1 off Dortmund, so we didn't have it that easy. The psychological blow that would have done at the very start of that campaign could have took that whole thing off the rails, and we would have just limped. And as we've seen before, whenever you get a do-in in Europe, that can harm you. But it didn't. We galvanised and got a point in.
Good word.
Got a point in Bergamo, which was unexpected, and I remember celebrating it like a victory actually in Rutherglen, not Bergamo, unfortunately. And then obviously what happened after January. We lose Kyogo, we don't replace him. The momentum starts to falter a bit, and then you have Barry Ferguson coming to Parkhead and coming away with a victory, which soured a lot of people's season. You have the cup final again, soured a lot of people's season. I came out of the cup final with a kind of, well, you know, the odds are that we can't win every game. It goes to penalties. It's a lottery. Do I think if we'd strengthened better in January that we would have won that cup final? Probably, yeah. And then that might have been the feeling around the whole camp. And I think as the August transfer window closed, every subsequent week since then, Brendan Rodgers has been getting grilled in the press about the transfer or lack of transfers and the whole model and everything else. And what is he supposed to do? He's not just going to just be like, that's not for me to talk about. He's going to talk about it, isn't he? And if that talking about it has created this toxic, poisonous atmosphere that has been labelled at him in that statement, then who's to blame for him saying that all the time? You know, it's not he. And this whole argument of him being in control of all the transfers and signing them all off, you and I both know that is definitely not true.
Yep.
So that whole narrative and everything else just it got me thinking last night about how the players must have felt, because the players are like, yeah, well, listen, we get it. You've been let down, but we still need to play games of football here. We're the guys that are still going out in the park, and we've got to try and get through this with what we've got and what we've not got. And that's probably what led to the whole sort of negative feeling around the club, to the point that, you know, we lose against Dundee. That can happen. You point back to the first season and the difficult times that he went through in September, October, November, and the losses, the loss to Hearts. I mentioned it last week. And that whole, but the fact is, you saw him get through that. So I had a feeling that despite all this chaos and noise, that he could get through it. But whatever's happened, and there's absolutely no way that I'm buying that he's walked because we got beat off Hearts. Or being sacked because we got beat off Hearts. I don't think that is. There's no way it's down to one result. There's all sorts of stories starting to come out now. Stephen McGowan saying that a meeting happened on Monday. You know, Brendan Rodgers kind of said, look, like there needs to be a line in the sand here. And then they phoned him back about a couple of hours later and went, yeah, we've accepted your resignation, which is slightly at odds with what that conversation probably finished with. I just think the way that it's happened was the last thing that I wanted to happen with Brendan Rodgers. I would have much rather this termination and ending had happened in the summer at the end of last season, you know, so it was a little bit neater, you know, and there wouldn't be this level of vitriol. And the statement is absolutely horrific and wholly unprofessional, you know, potentially illegal. I don't know. Like there's people saying things differently about it. And also the fact that it's covered by the fact that it was released by Celtic. So if Brendan Rodgers goes to task with that, then he's going against Celtic. Not a good look for the club, not a good look for him going forward. It just really sad to me. When I got a phone call from my mate on Monday night to tell me that it happened, I genuinely, I felt like I'd just fallen off my bike.
When did we last talk? The end of last week?
Thursday, before the Sturm Graz game.
But we had a chat on the phone at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And no matter what anybody says, I mean, you can try and, I don't know, you can try and get the temperature of the situation and all the rest of it. And we talk to as many people as we can, JP, who are involved in any way, shape or form about Celtic. But I was the same. I did not see Monday night coming. I didn't see it coming at all. And the thing is, as well, it was a great point Big Yogi made yesterday in relation to what you just said there about the statement coming directly from Celtic. Therefore, it would be a terrible look if somebody then takes Celtic to court. That has happened in the past. You know, we have had Lou Macari taking Celtic to court, for example, and others. There was, I think, Brian Scott. There was a court case with Brian Scott, the ex-physio. It's never a good look. You get dragged through the public court of opinion as well, don't you? So I'm not sure if that was by design, because the tone of that statement was so vociferous that you think to yourself, it did seem kind of knee-jerk, you know, JP. It's almost like, was it really properly thought out? And at any point, didn't someone think it was a good idea to say, I'm not sure about this?
Joe from the Homeboys described it. It was like a Facebook rant post. It was like, there's so many, like, you know, an oblique Facebook post. There's so many snakes in the grass. It's just going to be up me and the kids from now on. You know, F you to the lot of you. It was kind of a bit like that, although it wasn't oblique. It was very, very targeted at one man. And despite the sort of platitudes, the short platitudes at the start, they seemed pretty hollow by the time you got to the end of the last paragraph or sentence about no one man is bigger than the club. Yet here is that one man that kind of thinks he is, and everybody. It's become common parley now amongst everybody to sort of say, you know, listen to Alan Morrison going, are we getting this now? Is everybody getting it that there's one guy that calls the shots here, and it's not Michael Nicholson, it's not Peter Lawwell. These guys are merely footnotes in a far, far bigger paragraph. And that paragraph's Dermot Desmond. And for whatever reason, you know, his control over the club is so massive that, you know, he's phoning Martin O'Neill on Monday to ask him to come back to be the manager. And
you've got 10 minutes. You've got 10 minutes to decide. That was part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's like Mission Impossible or something like that. You can just imagine the music starting and the fuse going down. It's like Martin O'Neill's just going to get like.
I was thinking more Danger Mouse, you know, with that wee bomb that always used to go. Aye.
Yeah, well, Dermot Desmond has started to resemble some sort of like cartoon baddie from the 80s.
Who was the guy? Baron Greenback.
Aye.
Danger Mouse.
Yeah, there is a bit of that, but obviously, when I'm trying to digest the fact that Brendan Rodgers has gone, no sooner have you digested that you're being told that Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney are coming in, and you're just like trying to get your head round it. And I'm going back to that because obviously we have the the game that took place last night. I was there. Very surreal experience for someone. I mean, I'm the target market for what he's done. I am the target market. You're the target market for what he's done. And I was so kind of a bit appalled with the fact that he'd gone for O'Neill, because I was just like, you're severely dicing with someone's legacy here. It's right there. That's why I put those up. You know, people are like, oh, DVDs. Aye, yeah, I've got DVDs. You know, I've got books. You know, sorry. But those what those represent in our lives is what forms the modern Celtic. You know, pre-2000, to me, Celtic were, despite the strides that were made under Fergus McCann and Wim Jansen and Tommy Burns, it really kicked in when Martin O'Neill stood in those steps and said, I will do everything I possibly can to bring some success here to the football club. And he did, and did it fantastically well. Took us to heights that, I've spoken about this before, to have gone from barely getting past Europe, you know, the first couple of rounds, and having embarrassing defeats to European minnows, to never thinking you're going to see Celtic anywhere near a European final. He takes us there with a level of belief that we could actually go there and win it. But for us coming up against the Champions League winners in weight, when they won it the next season, we might have done it against a slightly lesser side than Jose Mourinho's Porto in their infancy, or the start of their journey. So I was really, really kind of like reluctant to drink the Martin O'Neill Kool-Aid that was being offered to me by the Reverend Dermot Desmond. But I have to say, we're now sitting here, and yes, it's only admittedly one game, but I watched the press conference with him last night, and I started to think about what the psychology of the dressing room would be listening to someone like that with so much football intelligence and everything else. And I just thought, it is potentially what we need. I can't believe I'm saying that, because I think it's still such an absurd idea that Martin O'Neill has been brought out of you know, retirement basically to come back and help us. And he said at no point did this happen before. There's rumours, I think, that there was maybe a phone call or something in the COVID season, I don't believe that, to be honest. I don't think Martin O'Neill's the type of person that would come out and fabricate. I think if that did happen, he would have said something about it. I don't see any reason for him to sit there and manufacture the truth. So it's kind of like, I think of all the times that Man United have needed a manager in the last 12 years since Ferguson left. Never sent an SOS out to Ferguson, or they may have, I don't know. But this definitely seemed like an SOS of sorts, because something needed to change within the dressing room. And like I mentioned before, the mentality must have been like, we're getting constant reminders of this failure, but we've got a job to do here. We've got constant reminders because the fans are protesting because of that. And as Roger said a couple of times, there'll be studies into this throughout the world about the idea of negativity feeding into a dressing room or whatever. And they're probably, Celtic might be included in that study in years to come. Like, did this have an impact? But if it is having an impact, it's not our fault, because we've seen glaring evidence that there's massive holes in this operation. The fact that they're actually having to go and get Martin O'Neill at 73 years old and put Sean Maloney with him to basically obviously help him, because if you'd just put Martin O'Neill on his own, that would have been wholly unfair. If you'd put Sean Maloney on his own, he would have been eviscerated, because it would have been like, well, what's going on here? This is, look, he's been king-made. He's been king-made from a position that wasn't really his position. You know, the pathway manager isn't really what Sean Maloney, I would imagine, wants to do long-term with his career. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's happy, and you've mentioned that he's been really good. So hopefully he can transfer some of that work into where it's really, really needed at the moment, and that's the dugout.
You know, the thing with Sean Maloney, there's so much to talk about, but the thing with Sean Maloney is that as long as he's not the manager and not that figurehead, and, you know, he's a coach. And I think that when you look at the makeup of Martin O'Neill's team first time round, and he spoke about it so often, we've done a number of evenings with Martin O'Neill, began very, very surreally for me, because it was like, imagine having an audience with Martin O'Neill. Imagine sharing a dressing room with Martin. You've been in that dressing room. I've got a picture here of Martin with a couple of guests that I'm going to bring up. And that was really surreal, you know, to go from the blessed Martin to sitting down having a glass of red and a sandwich with him. That was absolutely surreal. But I used to speak to him, JP, backstage or on the phone, and ask him all this other kind of stuff, the anorak style stuff. And he had a team of coaches. He had Steve Walford and John Robertson who did all that stuff on the training pitch. So this is no different, really. And in relation to what Sean Maloney brings to the table, what did Steve Walford bring to the table? He was a guy that Martin O'Neill knew from Wycombe Wanderers, and obviously he worked with him at Leicester. Coaches can be great coaches and be in the background, JP, right? So you're right about Maloney. If he had been named the manager at this time, it would have just fed in to the flames. It really would have. Martin O'Neill, I mean, bit of a masterstroke. Risky. Of course it's risky. You don't want his legacy to be tainted in any way, shape or form.
At the start of the game last night, I was petrified. The crowd started singing the Martin O'Neill song, and I said to the guys around about me, I was like, I'm the exact type of person that should be joining in with that right now, but I'm so on edge about how this is going to go, because
it is the year of the reunion. It's the year of the comeback, JP.
I was looking at the pitch and I was looking at the opposition, and well aware that they got a win at the weekend against Dundee. The goal that they scored was an absolute world. That was Falkirk that scored that goal, wasn't it? The one where the boy basically ran through everybody like Messi and then rolled the ball over his foot. And
yeah.
So I was aware of that, and I was aware of their start to the season, their points they've taken off Rangers, for example. They've won games handily, and got themselves into a decent position in the table. Good manager, Arfield starting. There was a lot of things that were pointing towards this. I was the horror show playing out in front of me was Arfield scoring and running up right in front of us and giving us a salute, at which point I may have got arrested. But
The Begbies. The Begbies.
Aye. Well, aye. But no, in all seriousness, I was genuinely worried because I just didn't know how the team were going to react. I didn't know. They'd had hardly any time to work with the team. Teams at a low ebb after Sunday. I didn't think that Sunday was a complete horror show. I thought Hearts were good in the second half when they needed to be. I thought Negren takes that chance to make it 2-1. It's a different game. I'm not saying we win the game, but I don't think we lose it. And we were going there at such a low ebb. Fair enough, we'd won against Sturm Graz, but we were off the back of a 2-0 defeat to Dundee. The injuries, everyone's Harry hindsight now talking about Dane Murray, but I didn't have an issue with Dane Murray starting in that game. I was kind of like, well, it's a Scottish domestic game against, fair enough, the league leaders and the best team currently in the country, but you're talking about developing players. Dane Murray's been a first team player for 4 years. Might not have played a lot of football, but he's been in and around the setup. He knows the system. It's just unfortunate for him that he had an absolute nightmare, and everything that could have gone wrong for the guy did go wrong, and that was kind of luck in Hearts' favour, I would say. You know, he goes to clear that ball another 10 times and he probably connects with it better and gets rid of it. But the fact that it rolls down his shin, you're just like, oh, that's, and then the penalty, and then he's probably moved out of the, I mean, people will say, why did he move out of the way for the Kizaridis shot? You're maybe moving out of the way because you're not wanting it to hit you and then wrong foot the keeper, because maybe your spatial awareness isn't great at that point, and you're like, if it hits me, it's going to wrong foot the keeper and go in, so I'll not let it hit me and trust Schmeichel to deal with it. But it comes through three people, so by the time it gets to Schmeichel,
exactly,
it's you're not blaming Schmeichel.
I was angry with Engels and Negren.
Yeah,
actually, because Donovan had clearly been instructed to put the winger wide, put him on the outside, and he was pushing to do that. I don't know if this was the first time he came into the inside for a shot, but Donovan was kind of sold a wee, by that. But you can say that that's down to the fact that you were up against the best player on the park on the day. I want Negren to be stronger, and I want Engels to be stronger. I think the focus on that goal has been put on Murray simply because of the penalty in the OG.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, right, we'll just lump everything on your shoulders. And to be fair, I have been talking about Trusty on and off this season because I'm wondering why he's not featured. I found that quite an interesting dynamic, the fact that he's disappeared from view, hadn't started a game. And then yesterday, you'll have seen it on Instagram, he puts up the match banner, the match graphic, and you're thinking, he's starting tonight. He is definitely starting tonight.
Trusty.
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing with Trusty is, it's like, he's not. When was the last game? Do you know when the last game he played before last night?
I'll check just while you're talking, but he hadn't started. He hadn't started this season,
or even kicked a ball. Right. For anybody that was flying that, Trusty should have started at Tynecastle flag, I'm kind of like, well, last night was a better game to bring Trusty back than Sunday. I mean, I know the guy's experienced, and we paid £6 million for him and everything else, but to bring someone back after not playing from whenever it was, you'll soon tell us.
Kairat.
Right.
The Kairat game at home. That was the last time we played it.
So that's August 27th, August 28th. So that's what? That's 2 months.
Yeah,
so
he
months.
Was out the picture. He was, and by the way, for many of the Premiership games, he wasn't in the squad.
When was that due to the plantar fasciitis thing that he's got?
Well, it's I'm looking at it here. 6 games on the bounce in the league. He did not feature at all. He wasn't even in the squad, and he comes on the bench against Hearts. Then he appears against Falkirk and plays the full 90.
But maybe it was Rodgers' plan all along to play Dane Murray on Sunday and then play Trusty last night, and reintroduce Trusty in a home game where we're going to have more of the ball, and it's a bit more of a kind of not safe environment, but a less hostile environment anyway. And obviously, Rodgers has questioned his temperament, strength before, so why would you dice with that or gamble with that in a game of that magnitude when you've got a young, fit youth academy guy who has been here for, like I say, made his debut under Ange 4 years ago, You know, you're trusting Johnny Kenny to start up front, who's been here for 4 years or 3 years. So, I mean, it's kind of almost a similar. Johnny Kenny's got a couple of years on Dane Murray, but it's still, the principle is still the same. You're relying on a guy rather than Shin Yamada, who, you know, has cost 1.5 million or whatever, and is older and has got more experience and everything else. But I said, it's going on to Johnny Kenny. I said maybe a few weeks ago when we were talking about the dearth of options up front, I was like, do you really see Johnny Kenny being a guy that's going to get us 20 goals this season? And I said, I really hope he does, and I really hope he proves me wrong if he gets the opportunity. But I didn't see it, and I think a lot of people didn't see it either. But that's him got 2. So he's got 18 to go, and he's got plenty of time to do it. So I genuinely would love to think that we'd be sitting here in April or May talking about Johnny Kenny having scored a decent amount of goals. Maybe not 20, maybe 15, you know, and then that's contributing. That's why you're getting paid money, and you know why you're here.
Yeah, there's a reason he's still here. I mentioned it earlier on today.
And got a new deal as well. And got a new deal.
4-year deal. Yeah, absolutely. And we could have loaned him out to Bolton, who wanted to buy him permanently. So I think the reason comes down to the application, the attitude, all these things that are very difficult to gauge on data analysis sheets, etc. JP, but my frustration with Johnny Kenny is the fact that we had to use him. That was the thing. When Ian Atchell goes off against Sturm Graz, the frustration comes back that we're in a position where we've got to, we don't really have any other options. Particularly Europe, where Brendan Rodgers had decided not to select the 2 signings that he rubber stamped in Shin Yamada and Callum Osmond. And obviously Osmond makes a cameo last night, looked as though he's got a bit of pace about him, so that will be interesting. I'm really interested to hear what people are saying in the chat. Dermot Desmond was at the game. I just want to touch on that as well. So it was surreal to see Martin O'Neill in the dugout. Right, I'm going to bring up a wee image here. Please, it's a wee bit of indulge me. Right? It's backstage at Bad as Art and Design. I think it was maybe the 3rd or 4th gig I had done with Martin, and Glas Vegas turned up. Rab Allen and his cousin is James Allen, isn't it? Rab and James, their mums are sisters, and they turn up. And Martin's a big fan. Not only that, he's a big fan of bands like Mogwai. He loves the Kinks. So obviously we were just sitting there chewing the fat. And interestingly enough, it was a bottle of Snoop Dogg red wine that he was drinking. Remember that? I don't know, 19 Crimes Snoop Dogg. So Martin O'Neill there, love the man, but a wee bit apprehensive about the legacy of this. But I think that if he's the figurehead, and he is that, he absolutely is that, and Maloney's doing all the training ground stuff, it'll be absolutely fine as an interim period and agreement, which he continually touched on. There was something said after the game last night, JP, where I don't know if he let the cat out of the bag on it. I can see this turning into some kind of a long-term role, not in the dugout, but at Celtic. I think it will be with a promise of, you know what, go and just come in here until the dust settles. Everything's chaotic at the moment. You can come in, and when we find the manager that we want to take this club forward, there will still be a position for you at this football club. Do you think that is a potential future for Martin O'Neill?
I don't know. I'm so at a loss as to, following the departure of Brendan Rodgers, which, like I said earlier, I didn't want it to end like this for Brendan Rodgers. I don't think he deserved that. I don't think he deserved.
It was messy for John Kennedy as well, wasn't it?
Really weird. John Kennedy going after 27 years with mere footnote of a thank you. There was no post with all the pictures of him with all the trophies, with all the different managers. You know, that I think Kerry Keenan did a more emotional post about John Kennedy than Celtic, and she doesn't even work for the club. She works for Aston Villa. So I know that he was an extremely popular member of staff. The thoughts that go into that are: did he leave because he wasn't offered the Maloney role, or he was just going to be part of Maloney's background team, or did he leave in solidarity with Brendan Rodgers over this absolute bin fire of a year, really, if you take into account January and losing Kyogo? Because he did say at the time, I want a striker in to replace the guy that I've just lost and all the goals I've just lost, and he didn't get it. And I can't subscribe to this. Oh, but it's really hard. It's like, well, we're up against it in this market. We're in Scotland. The weather's not great.
You're forgetting the UEFA financial regulations and
I know. You could add all. You could add as many layers to that excuse level as you want, but I simply can't buy that at all. And it's incompetence. It's penny pinching. It's expecting things to happen that might not happen. God Almighty, I've got my own experience of that in the last week that I'll learn lessons from. That things didn't happen. There was no backup. It was just it didn't happen, and therefore I had to just accept it. And Dolberg is the perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm.
All their eggs were in that basket, and they did not factor in the idea that he could maybe get an offer from another club, or the fact that his wife works in Amsterdam, and that was an emotional pull to go and play there so that he could live in the same city as his wife. Because a lot of footballers, I think, these days don't live in the same city as where their partners necessarily are, and that could probably put a strain on your career, your lifestyle, and everything else. So from that point of view, I don't have any issues with Dolberg doing what he did. He's perfectly entitled to choose something else that's better for him. But the thing is, we should not have been letting it get that late in the window and have no options as a option B or an option C. I don't think how could anybody argue with that? How could any rational person be like, oh, but they did their best? No, they didn't do their best.
There's plenty of folk will argue with you, though. That's the thing.
No, I know there is, but I simply don't accept that as being a reason. Like that, I thought Sutton was brilliant last night. I don't know if you've seen the clip on YouTube. You're going to have a great time with him tomorrow, because he's been wound up, and he's standing in between goons like Boyd, who I cannot. Everyone's like, oh, he's a really nice guy, is he? I don't care. I see enough of what I see on clips of him being completely obtuse, not listening to reason. Sutton presents the graphic on Sky Sports that's been shared widely of all the quotes of all the different managers. Neil Lennon, like basically sort of saying even Neil Lennon criticised the fact when he was in situ of the late transfer dealings. And Neil Lennon said something about like, oh, wasn't he happy with the Honda Civic Ferrari comments? Should Neil Lennon have come out after Ferencvaros and say to us that there was the players in that dressing room that shouldn't be in, that didn't want to be in there? Absolutely no way. That was sacred information that he didn't need to put out there.
Absolutely.
Brendan Rodgers put out about Maeda because Maeda spoke in Japanese press about the situation, and therefore Brendan Rodgers had a reason to discuss that. He's not going to be like, well, I'm not going to say anything about that. He'll be like, he was obviously like, right, look, he's spoken about it. I'm going to speak about it. Player has to leave. We didn't have our house in order to allow that to happen. And a £15 million bid was turned down. I don't know from which club, by the way. Somebody told me that. I don't know I don't know what the details of it was or which country. Likely, I think Germany. I think was the place that it was rumoured to be. But Neil Lennon came out, and that left a huge question mark over all those players. Nobody knew who it was. Everybody was playing guessing games and questioning everybody's commitment going into a season where we were already hamstrung by the fact that there was no supporters. We were already
no coming back from that.
There's no coming back from it, and genuinely, that was the moment that my heart sank that season. Was when I heard that. I remember sitting on my couch and watching that in here because obviously there's nobody there. And I remember watching that presser and just being like, oh no, we're in trouble. And the moment that I knew it with Brendan Rodgers wasn't the Honda Civic Ferrari comment. It was if you want a manager to maintain success in Scottish football, I'm not that guy. I want to be this. I've got a burning desire to match what we did last season or better it. Because he could see that was the way that everybody wanted to go in terms of the fan base. There was a huge desire, like that. The way that everybody speaks about that campaign last season suggests that that's what everybody's desperate for, is to go again at that level.
That's, remember last week, JP, I was talking about the changes in the history of Celtic, the big changes, and how you've got to change your approach. Now, the big changes I'm talking about, regardless of world wars or COVID. So, in a football sense, the big changes I was talking about, 1965, Jock Stein comes to the football club. The reason that's pivotal is because he changed the way that the football side of the operation ran. He picked the team. In the past, there was like a committee of board members who picked the team. Jock Stein changed all that. 1994, Fergus McCann takes over the club, saves the club, rebuilds the stadium, start to focus on season ticket holders, which up until that point we'd never done it as a football club. But the changes that happen is Jock Stein comes in, we're nowhere. We're not even chasing Rangers. There's a lot of better teams than Celtic in Scottish football. We become the dominant force. When Fergus McCann comes in, we're chasing Rangers. The next big change for me is 2003, because we have to bring in Peter Lawwell, because financially we're a basket case, just like Rangers. We don't know where Rangers are getting the money at that point. Celtic are spending all of their money and we are spiralling into debt. So to get to the UEFA Cup final, we changed our recruitment strategy under the man over your shoulder there, who was buying players directly from the Premiership on Premiership wages with no sell-on fee. Peter Lawwell comes in 2003, we completely tear it up and go in a different direction. Recruitment changes. We're passing the parcel with Rangers when it comes to the title, right up until the 2012 when Rangers are liquidated. And at that point, we should have changed and we didn't. And it's at that point, I believe, that we had to really focus on everything possible in terms of the recruitment strategy.
Isn't it funny that their new club that was created, they're all with hindsight going, that was our opportunity. The smart ones amongst them are all like, that was our opportunity to change how we are.
To build it, build it.
And absolutely. They didn't do it. They flung money at it and were overpaying players in the third division, and that was just madness.
It's the parochial aspect to that rivalry, JP. Mm-hmm. It's like they've got to be in the same league, they've got to be competing. And I think that the 2012 thing, what took our focus away from everything was we were going for the 9 and we were going for the 10. So that was what took our focus away as fans, I believe. Listen, I think we were all up for 9 and 10 in a row. I'm not speaking for everybody, but I'm pretty sure everybody wanted 9 and 10 in a row.
It went flat. It went flat because of COVID. 9 in a row was a damn squib. It didn't. And I still don't feel like I celebrated us winning 9 in a row. Whenever you speak about it on here, or whenever anybody speaks about it on here, it feels like, yeah, that happened, but it didn't really happen because we weren't given the opportunity to see it in person. Mm-hmm. It was players handed the trophy on the doorstep, through no fault of our own. I know that they, in their wild thoughts, love to sort of throw it, well, you won 8.5, your 9th was given to you. It's like, oh yeah, because we went in with a gun to the SFA and went, we want that trophy, by the way. You can't do anything else but give us the trophy based on the league table as it stood. I wanted those games played. You wanted those games played. Manager probably wanted those games played to allow us momentum to go into the next season. We didn't even get the momentum of winning a title to take into the 10th year. We went in when everything was so strange. So like it's strange that it worked out the way it did in terms of not getting to celebrate that. It was not enjoyable. Sitting here alone with a bottle of champagne, watching a stream, like it was just rubbish. There was no game. There was no game that won us the league. You know what I mean?
We went live. I remember we went live, and it was a strange conversation we had. It's still on the channel. Declan McConville was part of that conversation, I remember. But I think the club thought they could just reset and go for 9 again. I honestly did, and I think that was the basis of their ambition. And then you bring in a manager like Brendan Rodgers, that's never going to be the level of his ambition, is it? What I was going to say to you though, JP, obviously the shock is wearing off, the shock of Monday night. A lot of the shackles, here you go, right? So when Martin O'Neill was announced as Celtic manager first time round, I was having a wee look, because I know you like to spin a tune here or there, JP. You do have a passing interest in music. And interestingly enough, number 5 in the charts that week was a song called Shackles by Mary Mary. I can't remember that song. Shackles, it was called. Other notable top 10 entries were Forgot About Dre by Dr. Dre featuring Eminem, And Oops, I Did It Again by Britney Spears. There you go. So, yeah, Shackles, I'll need to listen to that. I haven't got a clue what that sounds like. Number one was It Feels So Good by Sonique. So that's how long ago. That was 25 years ago. And when I look at where we are now and the Shackles coming off last night, I'm thinking to myself, as much of a fan as I was of Brendan Rodgers, when that becomes a battle of the wills, a battle of the egos, I want this and you want that. Do you think that does feed into the dressing room? Because people are saying that whatever's happening on the terracing does. Well, I'm going to say that whatever's happening between the board or Dermot Desmond and Brendan Rodgers is more damaging, because you've seen it in the flat kind of approach of the play. There was no energy, JP. Now, you change that and you look at last night, you think there was a bit of life about us. And by the way, I seen Alan Morrison this morning saying 60% possession. I'd need to check that.
Oh, that's another thing. God almighty. I mean, the huddle breakdown will have an absolute field day with. I watched you and Kev and Chris last night, and did Kev not read out the XG stats? So not something like it's the best XG by any team this season.
Yeah.
In one game, and you're like, okay, well, there's quite clear evidence there that there's been an impact, whatever it may be. I mean, just before before Johnny Kenny scored his second goal, I turned to guys next to me and I was like, this is actually like watching a Martin O'Neill team, And then the ball gets dinked in from Ralston, headed across from. I mean, that it was Larsson Sutton-esque. I mean, I'm not saying that, and for a second that that there is that's going to suddenly become this great relationship and everything else, but in an isolated moment, that was like a very, very close to a throwback goal as you're going to get in a game at Celtic Park. And yeah, the atmosphere was different. Because there has been a divide between people, whether people like to admit it or not. There has been a divide. The thing with that statement from Desmond was, I'm going to divide it further, in a sense, because there'll be people that agree with that statement. I don't know how, if you were to take a percentage, I don't know. I think 20-Minute Tims did a poll, and it was like, who do you back, the board or Brendan? And Brendan came out quite strongly from
like 80-20 or something.
Yeah. So obviously that's it's just an online thing. You're not going to suggest that that's the reflection of the entire support. But however, there did seem to be a reasoning behind that statement to be like, as you said, quite Trumpian. It's like, well, if I get enough people on board, it'll quell the noise. If all the people that are dissatisfied at the moment, if I can get like close to 50%, in the same way that Scotland didn't get independence, it was very, very tight. There's still a lot of people disaffected in Scotland about the fact that we didn't get independence, whether it was in favour or not. There's still a lot of people that are, and that's grown over the years. So there's still a lot of people disaffected about Celtic. It's not just a case of like magic wand, here's Martin O'Neill, here's to the next chapter and all this sort of stuff. And you're like, wow, like that's wide in the mark. I think, I don't think you can really say we're writing a chapter. I mean, maybe we are. I don't know. Sunday's a new challenge, and it is a challenge because you look at their result last night. They got Easter Road. They get a victory.
Get a result.
Wasn't really expected. They hadn't kept a clean sheet away from home since December last year in any competition. So there's clearly evidence of improvement there. And up until about 3 or 4 days ago, we were in complete disarray. So I'm not for a second suggesting that Martin O'Neill coming in is by any way like some sort of miracle cure to our ailments. But I think listening to him last night, I like I said, I was trying to get my head into what would it be like for those players to hear Martin O'Neill come up to them and give them a bit of praise. Like when he said about James Forrest being a really
that song's called Shackles. Praise you in brackets.
Wait, is it not Fat Boy?
Mary.
Is it not Fat Boy Slim? No,
Mary. I'll need to check it out.
Is it not that? Is that not the original?
Maybe.
Maybe. What?
It might well be. Praise you,
what was I saying? I know I was trying to get my head into the idea of like what the players would think about, Martin O'Neill, because Martin O'Neill is what he is to us, but Martin O'Neill to Callum McGregor, to Luke McCowan, to Kieran Tierney, they know who this guy is. They might not have been alive when he was in his pomp. They might have been either just born or, very, very young. But they know who he is and they know what he did at Celtic. And they know that...
What about the ex-Leicester boys? Ian Atcho and I know that, listen, they're passing across, but O'Neill is a legend at Leicester. They'll know who he is. And you've got the Scottish boys from Ralston to Forest, Tierney not in the squad, of course. They'll all know. So I think there is a core group there, JP. And then you've got maybe people who have come in like Sirachi and all that who will not have a clue who Martin O'Neill is.
Did you hear his comments about Sirachi? When it was just like, the boy at left back, he can play. I just said I only met him today.
Wow, brilliant!
He really knows the guy's name, and he's in charge of him in a dressing room.
How well did he play, by the way? Sirachi?
Really, really well. I mean, to me, I would have thought he was stick-on man of the match, but I understand, the psychology of getting 2 goals for Johnny Kenny can't be understated. Strikers need to score goals. He's been getting game time and hasn't scored goals, so to get game time and score goals in a game like that, where it's everyone's going in there with question marks over their head as to how it was going to go. But Sirachi, I think, would have been quite a lot of people's man of the match. I mean, 92nd minute, he's bombing back to cover.
By the way, what about his pace? His pace is unreal.
That's what I said. I said to a guy next to me, it's like, this is like that's Maeda levels of pace there, to get back, and determination, because we're winning 4-0. There's no real jeopardy, but to know that you've got guys that are willing to do that even at 4-0 is quite comforting, really.
By the way, I was going to say this as well with regards to the likes of Sirachi. It's about building the relationships, I think, and him and Tuneki, I thought looked really good. They were really complementing each other. He loves an overlap as well. So the energy that I think we've been lacking came back in droves last night. The Trusty thing, I've been banging on about Trusty. Trusty has actually started 2 games this season, both against Falkirk. So last night was his second start of the campaign. I'm going to bring in some of these comments here because it's been an incredible week really for Celtic. I'm glad Dermot Desmond posted that statement, says Buzzbomb. At least we know for a fact who makes our decisions, so stop moaning. My gripe, Buzzbomb, was the fact that he released it. I think that, that might be his thoughts about an individual. Why put it out there? I don't think it's a good look for Celtic. I've covered this to death. People will be bored hearing about it. I'm bringing this up as well. Sarah Simpson says, I don't think that was Susan Whelan. I was checking this morning, and I agree with you. I don't think it was either at the game, as someone posted a pic of her and looked different. Also, given how chummy Michael Nicholson and Dermot Desmond looked, Michael Nicholson is not going anywhere. Right, so what picture are you talking about? Let's bring it up. So this was the tweet. And to give him credit, I think it was Don Kidioni who tweeted this. And the figure on the left, there was the widespread rumours that was Susan Whelan. I actually asked somebody who really is ITK, and they told me it was Sharon Brown. And I was looking at Sharon Brown's photos today, and it's hard to tell just with the angle, JP. But apparently, it certainly was not Susan Whelan, who is the former CEO of Leicester, of course, known to Dermot Desmond. So I agree with Sarah coming in there. It would have been far too much to have somebody in the box, in the director's seated area, who's replacing the guy sitting 3 or 4 seats down. I mean, Monday night was a low point, but I don't think we'd have done that, JP.
Well, there's not chat that Brendan Rodgers is going to be at Hampden on Sunday, so I guess... Where
did that come from? Is that Alan Brazil?
Alan Brazil and Ali McCoy's talking like, I texted. He says I texted Rodgers. Brazil said I texted Rodgers. He's in Rio, and then Ali McCoy said, I got a text from him saying I'm in Brazil, the country, not the guy.
Thanks for clearing that up. But then he wasn't in Rio, was he? He's in Glasgow.
I don't know. It seems bizarre. And then McCoy says like, he told me he's going Sunday. And he was like, I hope your team gets pumped. Like, as in, because he said that to him. And you're like, are they just at it here? Are they just trying?
They're at it. I think they're at it.
They must be. I mean,
he wouldn't do that. I mean, come on.
Texting Brendan Rodgers. I mean, it seemed a little bit unlikely, and also unlikely that he would be anywhere near Hampden. I did when I was watching the game last night at the ground. I was thinking to myself, and then when I watched the highlights when I got home, I was thinking, I wonder if Brendan Rodgers has watched this game somehow. I mean, I'm sure he has access.
Did that cross your mind?
It did
last night. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
It did, and I kind of like, watching it from, you would surely have an interest.
I know
to watch it, to see how these players that you've worked with and that you have been desperately trying to get a tune out of, and whether you criticise them or not, whether you criticise the recruitment or not, you've been so invested in that whole bubble. Like, to come out of it must have been quite, well, as a fan, it was quite sort of alarming to suddenly realise that Brendan Rodgers had basically managed his last game for Celtic, unless there is a world where Dermot Desmond leaves Celtic and that there's a new ownership and they signed Rod Stewart. They were talking. Oh, right, okay,
that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. That's been totally misinterpreted by a lot
of folk online. That was a chat. Yeah.
But I was just thinking about was quite a shock for him to suddenly realise that he was no longer the manager. And I was thinking, oh well, maybe there's a world where a new Celtic ownership brings back Brendan Rodgers with a point to prove in 5 years' time or something like that. I mean, but it saddens me that is the end of his chapter at Celtic. Because he said that he wanted to come back and he saw himself being edited out of Celtic's history. And he wanted to correct that. I wouldn't want to think that Dermot Desmond statement edits him out of Celtic history and makes that the narrative to Brendan Rodgers, because he absolutely doesn't deserve that with the success that he brought to the club and the trophies, the victories, the players, the development of players. Seeing Matt O'Reilly become the Matt O'Reilly that we know that he is and is playing out now at Marseille, playing in Champions League and stuff like that. I don't necessarily think that happens without Brendan's input. So, yeah.
I think Plunge is right. I think that was Sharon Brown. No, you're right. It's one of the ones where you do get the sense that we've done this so often as well, though, JP, twice in charge, I'm talking. And I know it happened previously with Bill McNeil, but in the modern day, we've seen it with Neil Lennon, we've seen it with Brendan Rodgers, we've now seen it under certain different circumstances with Matt O'Neill. All this chat around Ange, all this chat around the runners and the riders and all the rest of it. And I'll just stick to this. We could go through the top five in terms of odds and all that, JP, and at some point I'm pretty sure we will. I just want us to do due diligence. I want us not just to go back to the well. I want us to find the best candidate for this job.
100%.
And what I mean by that is we brought Brendan back, and the way he wanted to do it was different from the way the club wanted to do it. That's clear now. That's really obvious, right? So we need the right fit. We need the right fit. And I do have concerns about how we've been purchasing players because the strategy doesn't seem, for me, to be refined enough. Paul Tisdale's not really been mentioned over the last few days, interestingly enough. What role's he going to
the fact that he's leading the search for the new manager or coach?
I know, but even that, you think to yourself, that's something of a concern.
But is he, though? Because we all know that it's about whose number Dermot Desmond can get a hold of. Like that's what is the point in Paul Tisdale spending even a minute work on securing or coming up with a list of candidates when we kind of know that, in much the same way as when we need a player or when we needed a player at the last minute, it was Brendan Rodgers picking up his phone to get, they were relying on him at times to get a Schmeichel in the door as a keeper or a Iheanacho in the door as a striker after the window's closed because of their ineptitude. So it seems to me a kind of like false narrative that Paul Tisdale is going to have any responsibility to do anything like that at all. I just think it's going to be a case of, whoever Dermot Desmond decides wants to be the manager, and we just have to hope and pray that that's someone that is the right fit. Whether it will be or not, you kind of run out of lives at some point in terms of who you appoint. Got really lucky with Ange Postecoglou. I wouldn't necessarily think that going back to him would be a good idea, because like you said, it's just going back to, it's just regressing and not progressing, not being modern thinking, and dragging ourselves into the modern era. Like, I mean, I've almost made my peace with the fact that Brendan Rodgers might be the last sort of Celtic manager that I see, depending on how things go in terms of the development of the club. There's not
Celtic as in a Celtic-minded manager.
Potentially, yeah, or just in the fact that, like, he'll be the guy that is, I say, in control, but he wasn't in control.
I get what you mean.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Not just being like this kind of young buck coach that's like tearing up the Belgian league, or something like that. I've been linked with your man from Club Bruges, which I
that's the kind of link that excites me. That where it's all to do, JP, with someone who is a bit of a trailblazer at the moment, an up and coming, emerging talent.
Well, I mean, is it really the responsibility of a coach? Say we went for him, and he said, "I know I'm on lists." That's what he said. That was his quote. Because I thought he'd said, "I know I'm on their list," and then I had to reread an article to see that they'd actually that article that I'd read where he said, "I know I'm on a list," had been doctored, because he didn't say, "I know I'm on a list" or their list. He was like, "I know I'm on lists," which is generalized. Could be on anybody's list. Probably is on many people's lists because of his success there. But is it the responsibility of a coach? So say we go out and get him, does he then come in and tell us exactly what Bruges have been doing and how they've been able to navigate qualifiers better than us? Fair enough, they were playing Rangers, but you know what I mean, though. Like, does he come in with the saucer full of secrets and tell us everything about what's happening from top to bottom in Bruges? Or like, this is how they do this. This is how they do this. Is that where we get our information from? It would seem almost absurd to think that somebody would come in and do that. But ultimately, there's a lot he could bring that would maybe shine a light on what we are not doing in the right way. But it's just about whether or not the whole club will pivot to sort of accommodate someone like that or not.
I think we do need to study. We need to use case studies of the best examples of how to build an academy structure and how to build a football structure for the first team, and how both of those things work. And also part of that football structure is the identification in new players, and that's your recruitment. And I don't think we do it well enough. But the best thing to do is
we clearly don't.
Nowhere near it. And I think the best way to do that is by studying those that do it well. And the names that keep coming up at the moment are Club Brugge and Bodo Glimt, right? And you think to yourself, is the best way to do that by taking the manager? I'm not so sure if that's the best way of doing it, because if I wanted, let's use Hearts because they beat us at the weekend and they're sitting top of the league, only 6 points. If I'm looking at Hearts and I'm saying, I want to replicate what they're doing, let's get McInnes. No. You get the system. You don't get the manager, So I think we need to also look at the system of how Celtic operate as a football department within it. There's big changes happening as well, and I'm really keen, even if...
Do you not think it was interesting about Shanklin's comments afterwards, where everybody goes on about the analytics, but the bulk of this team was here last year. All they've done is kind of like pepper in positions better players, and as I listened to a bit of something and basically said that the best performing players, it was a huddle breakdown, the best performing players for Hearts on Sunday were all the Jamestown players.
Well,
with the best metrics.
It brings to mind a quote that I love. Go and check who actually said it. I'm going to say it now. It's not mine. He uses statistics as a drunken man uses lampposts for support rather than illumination. There you go. That's what I think about statistics. There's a famous or infamous quote. I'm just looking for something for Kev Graham. He's in the chat. I want to see what Kev's up to. A lot of people have been asking for Kevin Graham. Kevin Graham is still very much, there he is. Look at that. Afternoon, saying afternoon to everybody there. Kevin Graham's fine. He's just dealing with other stuff at the moment, as we do. JP Mason is jumping off bang on now, actually, JP, and there's a few comments I'm just going to run through, but
Okay.
I know that your time is limited, so thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you again next week, my friend. All right,
Cheers, Paul. See you later.
nice one. Thank you. Thanks everybody for your continued support. I'm just going to run for a few moments because, oh my God, that's far too big, especially if you've got a massive television. That is a massive heat. That's better, right? So I'm going to bring up some of these comments because it's important, obviously, to get your views and opinions as well. We've got Sriracha and Forest deserve a start on Sunday. I think after last night's game, I've got to look at Forest. That's the one I think that's a brilliant discussion point, and I'm pretty sure we will go through it tomorrow and before the game as well, Mad Dog, because I thought Forest was excellent last night. But would you start him? He's going to feature at some point. Is it the first hour or the last 30? And I think a lot of that will come down to Maeda's fitness. So Maeda comes on last night, and I think Maeda's fit, Maeda plays. But Forrest, when you watched him last night, you thought he is going to be a tremendous ally to Martin O'Neill in the short length of time that O'Neill is in charge. So actually, for me, Lawrence and I love a ding dong. We love to disagree. We don't do it just as a setup. We genuinely disagree on a lot of things. And Lawrence was absolutely sold by Sriracha very, very early doors. I didn't know enough about the player. And like everybody else, when someone who's a Uruguayan international is playing in Brazilian football, these are not two markets that I keep an eye on, I've got to say. So like everybody else, when we're linked or we sign a player from these regions, I will go and check them out on YouTube and look at their data and stuff like that. So I didn't have enough knowledge of Sriracha, but I'm loving his game. I thought he was brilliant last night. Barry McCluskey, excellent to hear from you as always, Barry. It's a pity how it ended for Brendan, but I'm okay with the timing of it. You know what? I would get over the departure of just about any manager when I think of some of the managers we've lost, Barry. It was the nature of it. We get a new man in. We can approach the January window in a different way now. I think, according to Steve McGowan, the chat on Monday was about how to approach the January transfer window, and I don't think Brendan certainly went into that meeting expecting to be emptied, his words. Always great to hear from you, Jungle Lion. Thank you very much for your support, as always. You're commenting on a daily basis. For anyone who's new to a Celtic State of Mind and how we do things, this is a community. We do get to know you, if not by avatar, maybe even in person at one of these gigs. Chris Sutton, I really am excited to chat to Chris tomorrow night. We've done quite a few nights with Chris, and he is brilliant. He's brilliant entertainment. He's got some brilliant anecdotes and stories and insight. But tomorrow night, I think what we'll also do is we will focus on the here and now, because if I wasn't to ask those questions, the crowd will certainly ask them in the second half of the night. I was checking this morning. There are only 6 tickets available, 3 VIP and 3 standard. So if you are in the area of the Greenock CSE in Laird Street, and it's a fantastic supporters club, got a really good relationship with the guys in there, come along. The ticket link is underneath the video, so it would be great to see you. And it is more or less a sellout, but there are 6 tickets available if you want to come along. Go and check that out as well. We've got the Urban Culture. I'm going to go old school and call you the Urban Culture. Read online Kennedy was sacked, 27 years, and he gets a passing mention as a tribute. I mentioned this to JP. JP was otherwise engaged this afternoon. I had to nip away a wee bit early. But I thought it was important to run through some of these comments. I hadn't brought enough of them up. And yeah, I do think it was unusual, the manner in which Kennedy's departure was announced. There wasn't a great focus put on it. As someone who has given us 27 years service in various different roles. And yeah, there's a story there. And it's one of the ones that you may hear it on the grapevine, we may hear it down the line, but there's definitely a story in relation to how that all transpired. Who knows, Culture? Yeah, maybe there's a job down south somewhere, and Rodgers and Kennedy will pop up as part of the management team in the next couple of months. Who knows? Opinion Glaswegian OG. If we go on a winning run and win this league, getting rid of Brendan will be justified. I'm not arguing with that. I'm not arguing with that at all. As I say, and I keep saying, it's a statement that rankled me. His tactics were stale, one-dimensional, and he refused to even slightly tweak the system. I mean, what was the team talk like last night? sometimes if you hear Chris Sutton or John Hartson, Alan Thompson, Jackie Mack talking about Mayalbe, talking about the team talks from Martin, what was it like? Was it less about, going down that tactical route and more about playing to your strengths and some of the old school stuff that people think died a generation ago? I'm not so sure if it has died. I think sometimes what can happen is it becomes a game of chess. Everybody starts playing the same game if you're an attacking team, and therefore if you're defending it, there is a system that you can utilise to defend it, regardless of how strong you are as a football club. And I think we suffer, particularly at home, domestically there, against these teams who just, they've learned how to play our type of game, our possession based game, and they've learned how to play that. So to throw a bit of chaos into the mix, as I think we did last night, it takes the shackles off, which is where the headline, the tagline came from. Rasputin 3158. Susan Whelan was not there. I agree with you. Done a bit of digging this morning, and I believe that to be someone else. Nicholson is going nowhere. Would you leave a job with no power responsibility where you earn £1 million per annum? What I would say about that is I don't think Dermot Desmond planned to be at the game last night. I don't think when he looked at the fixture list, he thought, I'll tell you what, that wee Wednesday night game against Falkirk where it starts to get cold in Glasgow, that's the one I'll pencil in. So regardless of your thoughts around how Celtic fans are protesting, because I believe every Celtic fan supports Celtic the way that they want to support them. And the only time we've ever got an issue, I think, as a wider fan base, is if you bring the club into disrepute. I think that's always been the way. But everybody supports Celtic the way you want to support them. There's people go to Celtic Park who will never, ever tune into a Celtic podcast in their life. That's just the way it is. Back in the day, I was a Celtic supporters bus kind of supporter because of where I live geographically. And I got into the fanzine scene. That's how I supported Celtic. I was into the history, a bit of an anorak in that respect. Not a historian, just loved the history of the club. Other people support it their own way. They don't know what happened pre-2000. That's just the way it is. But I'll tell you something, there can be no argument that the action the collective has taken has definitely prompted action at Celtic Park. Dermot Desmond was there last night. I don't think he would have been there last night. Is he there because there are going to be discussions today at Celtic Park? That would not surprise me in the slightest in the boardroom. And if big changes happen, we'll hear all about them, and we can look into them on this very show. Barry, this is your brace. In hindsight, was Lenny throwing his hat in the ring last week? What I would say, Barry, I think with hindsight, Neil Lennon knew what was coming. Or did he? Gone by the PLZ interview with Steve McGowan. I would also say this, going back to a point that JP mentioned there. Had Neil Lennon not had a job, he might have been the guy in the dugout last night. He might have been the guy that Dermot Desmond phoned before Martin O'Neill got the phone call, right? Would he have done that? I think he probably would have. Dermot, I'm talking about here. So, yeah, I think that Neil Lennon obviously is, an individual who praises Dermot Desmond, calls him a genius, says he's the most intellectual individual that he's ever worked with or indeed met. So there's a mutual respect there. But Martin O'Neill, I think, under the circumstances, albeit absolutely blown away by it as it unfolded, Barry, on Monday night. Last night, I think you've seen the Martin O'Neill effect in full flow. Ryan, Celtic boy, Dick Dastardly and Dermot Desmond are brilliant cartoon figures. Is this even real? I've asked myself that a few times this week, Ryan. Is this even real? You're going to have that Dallas moment where you wake up and it was all a dream. McLaughlin, P, Uruguayan accents, and he's talking bollocks. Yeah, he should be a comedian, Martin. I'll tell you something. In terms of post-match press conferences, to fit in the word bollocks, I think he done pretty well. Celtic, the Unrestricted View podcast. Go and check the guys out on their YouTube channel and on the socials as well. Bit of a bold choice to bring Martin in under the circumstances. Such a rapid change up and group of brand new voices around the place also. But it has given us a bounce. It's given us the cliched new managerial bounce. And hopefully we bounce right into Sunday's game with that same energy. Loopy 33. The mystery remains, though. What's up with Bernardo? I thought we'd have seen him last night. I hope we do see him. I hope that what's happened here everybody's got a clean slate. I hope that everybody's got a clean slate. I think we've seen some signs of that last night when you consider that Trusty comes back in for just his second start of the season, and Osmond managed to actually make his debut last night, having joined the club in the summer. So Shin Yamada, on the other hand, was nowhere to be seen. So, yeah, I hope that Bernardo gets a restart and he's reset. I think we've seen enough. And his first spell, bizarrely enough, when he was only on loan, to suggest that he had plenty of talent to offer. But then McCowan comes into the play, Loopy, and sets up that goal and plays really, really well. River C3, thank you very much for getting involved. Football looked more alive yesterday. The real test will be on Sunday. Yeah, absolutely. I think what we needed last night was that type of performance, that type of bounce. Yes, there were protests outside the ground before the game, but the atmosphere was different inside the ground as well, River C. So, yeah, I think we needed that to set us up nicely for Sunday. Let us know in the comment section if you're watching now or post live your starting 11. I think there's a few question marks over, was Kieran Tierney being rested last night? Is Dyson Maida now fit? And will he get a starting jersey? Will he get a starting berth? Let us know any of the changes that you would make at the weekend. Jungle Line, Susan Whelan. Just because Susan Whelan wasn't at the game last night doesn't mean to say that she is not in the picture when it comes to other changes. Power to the collective, says Patrick Docherty as well. And CJC, it will take $5 million to get Kieran McKenna. Can't see Celtic paying that. He is a name, of course, that has been quoted as one of the front runners, one of the favourites to take the Celtic managerial role. Is it 2003? Have I gone back in time? And it's nice to see the team playing with a smile, says Ian McGinley. Yes, it is a bit of a throwback, but we are where we are, and we're going to have to embrace it. The Slabbering Cabbage, hail Martin O'Neill's post-match press conference was absolutely brilliant, says the Slabbering Cabbage. How long will we run with the comments? Another 5-10 minutes, do you think, guys? McLaughlin, you're back in as well. Who'd have thought a left footer could play right centre-back? We were speaking about this yesterday. A lot is made of that, isn't it? I mean, I've never played football at any level, but in terms of defence, I was a defender, and any defensive actions, it's any leg, it's any foot. It's all about passing and controlling the ball, isn't it, when you've got a favoured foot? And I think when you watched last night, the way that Trusty played, the balls that he was winning, the way he defends, the aerial duels, etc., does all that with ease, regardless of whether he is on the right or the left-hand side. So it was good to see that. I also think it was right to bring Dane Murray out of the firing line, put him on the bench, let him get over what happened at Tynecastle. You're back in as well, River C3. I hope we get to hear from Kennedy. 30 years at the club, out the door, should be getting more attention. Does someone leave of their own accord? I'm not sure if it was a resignation or a sacking. Do they leave of their own accord if there is nothing lined up for them? Does a footballer in the modern day do that? I'm not sure. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see something lined up in the not too distant for Kennedy and Brendan Rodgers. Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, always an absolute pleasure to see you. I know that you're going to drop off the live sometime soon, but it's great to see you when you're here. Since it looks like I've never got the wing duo I've been shouting about for a month. Tuneki on the right and Dyson on the left. Dyson has to start centrally with Kenny on the bench. Right, so if you do that, then are you sticking with Forrest on the right? Jay Conley, Jay Larkin, let us know your thoughts on that as well. Loopy, you're back in as well. Dyson will be gone in 2 months. Need to start planning for life without him. Yeah, the likelihood is we will have some departures in January, but what we need to do, I think, is we need to have a plan, and the manager has to be part of that plan. We cannot continually make the same errors when it comes to it, right? I mean, the players who are not playing, who were signed in the summer, those who didn't make the Europa League squad, you're talking 4 or 5 players there, Loopy. And if there is a disconnect between the manager and the decision-making process of the recruitment team, then that's an issue. So we need to make sure that we are prepared for January. And the first part of that preparation for me is to make sure that the manager who's going to be actually running the team has to have a say in the players that we're bringing in. Not the whole say, but they need to have a say in that. Drew, 1967, the board invest in a young, new high-profile manager, give him a budget and overhaul the youth setup. I think the overhaul of the youth setup has begun. And I think you can see that not just with the bricks and mortar up at Barrowfield. I think, obviously, the introduction of the pathway manager role initially for Darren O'Day and then taken on by Sean Maloney shows that there is an overall underway, Drew. Chris McCart has left or is leaving the building. There will be a new head of academy, Stevie Hamill. I don't think it's any secret, will be taking over that role. So things are changing at the academy, and it's not before time. Danny Boy, DD is not a man you'd want to mess with. Do you think I should extract my statements from Monday? He's a tough cookie. They didn't become a billionaire by being soft. No, you're right. He is a tough cookie. But I also think that we are all entitled to anything. It is to our own opinion, isn't it, on that? And I aired my opinion without agenda, without compromise. And I aired that on Monday. I've been airing it all week. Robert Highland says, Kenny also has pace. Absolutely, he does. And we've got Celt 6788, 2 good years for Celtic. I miss the old Monty from pre-COVID. Free the Rebel. Monty's still in the chat. I don't know. Has he changed? Has he mellowed out with age? Here's Monty coming in actually to say that Davy Hay was told to buy a player himself. I think he was told to buy a couple. Wasn't it Joe McLaughlin and Stevie Clark? Pat Nevin rings a bell as well. 2 of those 3. He was told, and this was post Love Street, 1986, if you want those guys, you're going to have to buy them yourself out your own pocket. And I don't think Davy Hay had the £1 million it would have cost to bring them to Celtic. But you imagine bringing them to Celtic in that 86-87 season. We do look back on what-if moments. Sometimes you need that poor season in 86-87 to then bring Big Billy back and have the double, and I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't change that for the world, what happened in the centenary season. Fob says Rodgers walked to save himself. If you go by, Rob, I don't know if you've seen it, but there is an interview with Steve McGowan, who's very well connected on the PLZ channel, and he talks about what happened on Monday. And by all accounts, Brendan Rodgers did not go into that meeting with the intention of walking away. So go and watch it. I would say go and watch that. It would suggest to me that Stephen McGowan does have some kind of an insight into what went on Monday. George Robertson, you're in as well. Let's have a wee look at your thoughts on the situation. PJD McAvenny said Kennedy and the lads went to resign, but were sacked before they tendered their resignation. So that's all interesting stuff. But as I say, the truth comes out in the wash, doesn't it? I've got to thank every single person for your continued support of A Celtic State of Mind. We've now been running this daily show for 6 years, and we aim to improve it. We aim to improve the content that we've been providing for a number of years now, and it's all thanks to everybody that tunes in and supports what it is that we do, gets involved in the chat, comments post live, gets involved in the socials, follow us on all the social media channels, every single one of them, even the ones that I don't understand how to use yet. And also you can tune in on Friday night. We did just to pre-warn you, we did a show that was recorded, believe it or not, on Monday afternoon. And so it was pre-Rodgers removal, resignation, sacking, delete as appropriate. And so it was instantly out of date come Monday night, but there was a lot of really good content in there. So I'm going to put it out regardless, but with a caveat. And I might just add that caveat in by coming on live and saying, look, I'm about to play this and play it, but explain to everybody who's going to watch this was before. And if I need to pause it, actually, I can do that as well. But on Friday night, whilst that is up and running, I will be in Greenock CSC with Chris Sutton. As I said before, I checked before we went live. I knew it was going well, but there's only 6 tickets left. If you want to come along and be part of the Acsom live experience, please do so Friday night in Greenock. Where else would you rather be? Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. Give us a big thumbs up on the channel. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join us again tomorrow at 12:30 on A Celtic State of Mind.